There have been many videos that have come out over the last couple months on how to lose 30 pounds by the end of 2025, but since we're close to the end of the year now, losing 30 pounds is probably pretty unreasonable. So I thought I would share with you how to lose 10 pounds by the end of the year based on my experience of losing almost 45 pounds over the last 2 years. Now, one of the things I noticed in these videos was that they were all pretty much saying the same thing, and honestly, the advice that they were giving was not exactly the same advice I would give as a person who has recently lost weight. So I wanted to share with you my viewpoint on what I think of these different talking points and how I would differ on the advice that I would give you. Now, this is based on me being a 50-year-old woman who is 5'2". About 2 years ago, I found myself at 175 pounds. I was about 50 to 60 pounds overweight. And after getting some blood work back that didn't come back that well, I was pre-diabetic, and that scared me because I knew people that had had a lot of complications from being diabetic and ultimately died. I also saw some photos of myself that made me realize that I wasn't as healthy as I thought I was. I have a tendency to probably be a glass half full person, and I actually thought I was healthier and looked better than I really did. So when I saw those photos, I realized something's got to change. So I embarked on a journey to lose those extra pounds, and then ultimately I was able to lose it. Back in September, I was on a 6-month plateau and I wanted to lose another 10 pounds. I enlisted a mentor who helped me lose those 10 pounds within a 3-week period, and all of the advice I'm going to give you is based on that time period. Now, I'm going to put my advice into 2 groups because I'm talking to 2 different types of people trying to lose weight. The first person is a person who has to lose 30 or more pounds, and the second person is someone who's getting closer to their goal weight and is trying to lose 20 or less. And the reason I'm doing that is because the way I approached my weight loss for the first 30 pounds and what worked was slightly different than what I had to do to lose the next 20 pounds. So the first thing is figuring out how many calories you need to eat. Now, in these other videos, a lot of them were saying that you need to multiply your body weight by 12, which for me would be 1,584 calories. I can tell you from my experience, I would never have lost weight if I would have eaten almost 1,600 calories a day. In fact, I was typically eating around 1,700 calories when I was up to 175. I had to cut back my calories. Being 5'2", I'm definitely not going to be able to eat as much as a woman who's 5'7" or 5'8". My basal metabolic rate, my fat burning rate is just not going to be as high. And so what I had to do is I had to figure out exactly how many calories I needed to eat for me specifically. And so my advice to you, if you're trying to figure out that calorie target, is not to use a predetermined formula, but instead I would start out at around 1,200 calories, or if you know your BMR, how much you're burning throughout the day, I would reduce that by around 300 to 500 calories per day as a starting point. See how hungry you are, see if you're able to maintain that level of calorie deficit, and also see if you're able to lose weight at that calorie deficit. So if you're not losing weight, then you may have to pull back 100 to 200 calories per day. I would monitor that every 3 days. If you're not losing a half a pound to a pound every 3 days, then you probably don't have your calories low enough. When I lost my 10 pounds back in September, I was losing around 0.3 to 0.5 pounds per day. The second piece of advice was focusing on protein and figuring out how much protein you needed to eat per day. Now, the reason why this didn't really work for me, and I really didn't think a whole lot about how much protein I was eating, the only thing that I really focused on was low carb. I made sure that my carbs were typically less than 20 grams per day. I could go as high as 50 grams per day. However, I found that I felt pretty good on 20 grams or less. And between that and the calorie target, those were really the only 2 things that I needed to focus on in order to have consistent weight loss. Now, for the first 30 pounds that I lost, which was pretty easy, I primarily ate a higher fat diet. So the foods that I ate tended to be a little higher in fat, a little less in protein, but they were both low carb. So I would have things like a lot of cheese. I would eat a lot of meats that I liked, like fatty hamburgers, sausage. I would eat eggs, mayonnaise. I could have some avocado. So really anything that just had a higher fat content for me worked really well. That 30 pounds was pretty easy to come off It did take about 1.5 years for me to lose that, but I didn't have to do a lot of restriction or worrying about what I was eating as long as I was just keeping those carbs low. Now, when I got closer to my goal and I started to plateau and I went on my plan to lose 10 pounds in September, I did have to lower my fat percentage a little bit. I kept the calories pretty low, around 850 to 900 calories, but I had to cut out some foods that had a little bit higher fat content, and also some foods that I was tending to sip on during the day, like creamer in my coffee. I had to give up about 3 cups of that per day just to bring my calories down and also to bring my fat content down just a little bit. I also gave up cheese on that, and I did focus more on like protein sources for those 3 meals. So I think it really depends on where you're at. Now, me personally, I don't like to eat a higher protein diet, but in order to lose the 10 pounds, I did have to do that temporarily. Now, since then, I've been able to maintain my weight loss, and I've actually lost another 5 pounds since then. And I was able to incorporate back some of those foods that I gave up when I was on that 10-pound weight loss plan. Another piece of advice that was given is to set the right meal schedule. Again, this is like another rule that they add on. So one of the problems I had with these videos is it was just a lot of things to have to try to remember and keep track of. And for me, I like to keep things very easy to follow, and things that work. I didn't really focus a lot on what times of the day I was eating. I focused more again on the low carb and lower calorie. When I eat those foods, I would typically do it by hunger and fullness mostly. If I started to get really hungry, then I would have my next meal. So when I was 50 pounds overweight, I didn't really have to worry about cutting off my meals at all. As long as I just stayed within my net carbs, I could pretty much eat any time of day and I would still lose weight. As I got closer to my goal, my last 10 to 20 pounds, I did start cutting off my meal times around 6 o'clock. In the beginning, that was kind of hard because I would get hungry at night, but I found ways to work around that. For instance, I found that when I drank a lot of water, that really helped to reduce the acid in my stomach and the intense hunger pains would go away. And after about a week, I noticed that I wasn't really feeling as hungry at night like I had before. So my body was starting to get used to it after about a week. Now, in terms of how much water to drink, I mostly just kept it to 2 of these per day, which is about 40 ounces a piece. Sometimes I would actually drink 2 of those. Sometimes I wouldn't drink that much, but I would definitely drink water whenever I got really hungry. I don't get overly concerned with downing a whole lot of water. I try to drink when I'm thirsty. I try to eat when I'm hungry. I try to really listen to my body to tell me whenever I need to do those things. But having a guideline to have about 2 of those per day at least gave me a benchmark that I could look at, and it was really easy to monitor and see if I had actually reached that target or not. Toward the end of the night, I would tend to get thirstier, and I would also keep a water bottle by my bed at night because I would get thirsty in the middle of the night, and it would give me something to be able to drink and sip on, and then I'd be able to go back to bed. For strength training, a lot of these gurus were saying that you should lift weights 3 times a week. I think that's wonderful if you have time. For me, I'm a busy mom, I'm a busy wife, I work full time, I do YouTube, and I just don't have a lot of time to be able to go to the gym. So I had to come up with something that actually worked for me and my schedule. So what I did was I went to the gym once per week and I tried to lift every body part. So at least I was hitting those once a week, and I found that was enough for me to continue to lose weight, and I did not see a decrease in my muscle mass. Now you might be wondering, how do I know whether or not I had a decrease in my muscle mass? Well, because I have a scale that I bought that actually gives me the stats of where I'm at. It tells me my weight, it tells me my body fat percentage, how many calories I'm burning per day, my BMR. It tells me how much muscle mass I have. And so I can monitor that data from day to day when I weigh myself, and I can see whether or not I'm losing primarily muscle or if I'm losing primarily fat. Now, you will lose some muscle no matter what when you lose weight, because your body doesn't even need as much muscle to carry you around as you're losing weight. But as long as I'm lifting weights 1 time per week and I'm getting pretty sore from that, which is always my goal, that's how I know I actually worked out my body well. Not too sore where I feel like I can't get out of bed, but I definitely like to feel that my muscles worked in my workout. And as long as I do that, I feel pretty good about maintaining my current muscle. Now, one of the things that we really struggle with as women over 50 is poor sleep. And that was definitely true for me. When I turned 50, I noticed that it was getting harder and harder for me to actually sleep through the night. So a lot of times I was waking up at 2 or 3 in the morning every night. And I thought it was because I had a lot on my mind, but I realize now that actually it was due to my hormones. And then once I was awake, then I would think about all of the things in my life at 2 in the morning that maybe were worrying me, or even just things that I wanted to keep top of mind the next day. Now, I do believe sleep is incredibly important in order to lose weight, because I know for me, when I'm tired, I am more snacky. I have less willpower. I want to eat more. So I really made it a priority for myself to get the sleep that I needed. Now, what that meant is I can't always control how much I sleep at night. I can't control if my body wakes me up at 2 or 3 in the morning. So what I would do is I would prioritize sleep during the day in addition to the night, which means that if I started to get tired during the day, then that would be the time that I would take a break and maybe just take a really quick cat nap and get caught up on some sleep. Or around like 4 o'clock when I was done with my work, then I would go ahead and lay down and take a nap then. For years, I used to just go into my car, lay down for 20 minutes. I would fall asleep quickly, and then I would get back up and I would feel so much better. I wouldn't have as much food noise during the day after that, and I just felt like I was revived. Another piece of advice that's floating out there is that you have to get 10,000 steps of walking per day. Now, I do think walking is great. It's a great exercise, and I do think we should try to get in some activity and exercise, but you don't necessarily have to do it to lose weight. Personally, I would just go for a half an hour walk at night for the first 30 pounds that I lost. As I got closer to my goal, I moved that to about an hour. My daughter and I created a path that we would walk on that was approximately an hour long. I didn't focus on walking overly fast or really pushing myself. I just went for a comfortable walk, and I walked for an hour on that path. But I had a friend who was in her 60s. She had arthritis. She was in a wheelchair, and it was really challenging for her to walk. She could, but she didn't really do a lot of walking. She went on a low carb diet, and she got down to around 110 pounds just from diet alone. So you don't have to do any walking or exercise to lose weight, but if you want to have that fit and healthy look, you're definitely going to want to walk and exercise, and you're also going to want to add in those weights because that is what builds very attractive muscle. Another thing I do is I try to get in some non-exercise activity. I've done some videos recently where I am cleaning my house or I'm decorating for the holidays, and I'm talking to you about different weight loss topics at the same time so that we have a chance to get up together maybe for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and just kind of work around our house. Those calories really do add up during the day more than you think they do. So even if you don't want to go for a walk, but maybe you're okay with just being really active around your house, that's a great way to get in some activity as well. Now, those were pretty much the things that I would do, that I would focus on if you want to lose 10 pounds by the end of the year. And wouldn't it feel great for you to be 10 pounds lighter by Christmas rather than actually gaining weight over the holidays, starting the new year at a lower weight? And then if you have more weight to lose, you can just keep going with what you've already been doing. After 2 years of following this plan, I'm down to the lowest I've been since I was 26 years old. I'm now 132 pounds. It feels great, and if you're wondering if it's worth it, I'm telling you it definitely is. And if you want to learn more about how I lost those 10 pounds in 3 weeks, I go into even more detail. I created a whole series of videos on that. You can go ahead and watch them right here on the end screen, and I'll see you over there.